History of Paris City. The oldest traces of human occupation in Paris are human bones and evidence of an encampment of hunter-gatherers, dating from about 8000 BC during the Mesolithic period. Between 250 and 225 BC, the Parisii, a subtribe of the Celtic Senones, settled on the banks of the Seine, built bridges and a fort, minted coins, and began to trade with other river settlements in Europe. In 52 BC, a Roman army led by Titus Labienus defeated the Parisii and established a Gallo-Roman garrison town called Lutetia. The town was Christianized in the 3rd century AD, and after the collapse of the Roman Empire, it was occupied by Clovis III, the king of the Franks, who made it his capital in 508. During the Middle Ages, Paris was the largest city in Europe, an important religious and commercial center, and the birthplace of the Gothic style of architecture. The University of Paris on the left bank, organized in the mid-13th century, was one of the first in Europe. It suffered from the bubonic plague in the 14th century and the 100 Years' War in the 15th century, with recurrence of the plague. Between 1418 and 1436, the city was occupied by the Burgundians and English soldiers. In the 16th century, Paris became the book publishing capital of Europe, though it was shaken by the French wars of religion between Catholics and Protestants. In the 18th century, Paris was the center of the intellectual ferment known as the Enlightenment, and the main stage of the French Revolution from 1789, which is remembered every year on the 14th of July with a military parade. In the 19th century, Napoleon embellished the city with monuments to military glory. It became the European capital of fashion and the scene of two more revolutions, in 1830 and 1848. Under Napoleon III and his prefect of the Seine, Georges-Eugène Haussmann, the center of Paris was rebuilt between 1852 and 1870 with wide new avenues, squares, and new parks, and the city was expanded to its present limits in 1860. In the latter part of the century, millions of tourists came to see the Paris International Expositions and the new Eiffel Tower. In the 20th century, Paris suffered bombardment in World War I and German occupation from 1940 until 1944 in World War II. Between the two wars, Paris was the capital of modern art and a magnet for intellectuals, writers, and artists from around the world. The population reached its historic high of 2.1 million in 1921, but declined for the rest of the century. New museums, the Centre Pompidou, Musée Marmottan Monet, and Musée d'Orsay were opened, and the Louvre given its glass pyramid. In the 21st century, Paris added new museums and a new concert hall, but in 2005 it also experienced violent unrest in the housing projects in the surrounding banlieues, suburbs, inhabited largely by first and second generation immigrants from France's former colonies in the Maghreb and sub-Saharan Africa. In 2015, the city and the nation were shocked by two deadly terrorist attacks carried out by Islamic extremists. The population of the city declined steadily from 1921 until 2004 due to a decrease in family size and an exodus of the middle class to the suburbs. But it is increasing slowly once again as young people and immigrants move into the city. Prehistory. In 2008, archaeologists of the Institut National de Recherche Archéologique Préventive, INRAP, administered by France's Ministry of Higher Education and Research, digging at number 62 Rue Henri Farman in the 15th arrondissement, not far from the left bank of the Seine, discovered the oldest human remains and traces of a hunter-gatherer settlement in Paris, dating to about 8000 BC during the Mesolithic period. Other more recent traces of temporary settlements had been found at Parisii in 1991, dating from around 4500 to 4200 BC. The excavations at Parisii found the fragments of 3 wooden canoes used by fishermen on the Seine, the oldest dating to 4800 to 4300 BC. They are now on display at the Carnavalet Museum. Excavations at the Rue Henri Farman site found traces of settlements from the Middle Neolithic period, 4200 to 3500 BC. The Early Bronze Age, 3500 to 1500 BC, and the First Iron Age, 800 to 500 BC. The archaeologists found ceramics, animal bone fragments, and pieces of polished axes. Hatchets made in Eastern Europe were found at the Neolithic site in Parisii, showing that first Parisians were already trading with settlements in other parts of Europe.